Chapter 9. Whatever you desire is available to you, but we cannot prepare a horse for you. We're all out of horses. Millennium looked to his brothers and shrugged his shoulders. I was just kidding, she said, smiling. The aliens didn't have a language translation for jokes. She could see the confusion in their eyes and faces. She thought it would be wonderful to have beef or fish. All she had been eating was the stuff in a bag they gave new recruits. With a little water and flavoring, she could swear it was beef. But after 5 years confined to that pod with being fed intravenous, it's a wonder she was hungry. When she graduated and was allowed to eat with the officers, she didn't recognize the food in the cafeteria of the Star Splitter as being meat of any kind, but the cook assured her that it was of the animal species. He just didn't specify if it was anything she knew of in the Earth's solar system. When she reached the pool and sauna room, Millennium's brother handed her to him, and his brothers remained outside at the doors to keep anyone from entering. Only Danielle and Millennium stood in the room with a pool the size of a football field. Wow! I get to swim in this all alone? If you like, Millennium said. Would you swim with me? He turned and looked up, and Danielle raised her head to see what he was watching. It was like a two-way mirror. She suspected that it was something of that kind, but didn't know for sure. And behind that mirror was another osmium. She hoped he was as handsome as the three with her. Who's watching us? King Lannis. Why is he watching? This is his ship, and he's curious about your female species. Don't you have females on your planet? That was a stupid question. Don't answer that, Danielle said. If you wish, I won't answer that question. I'm going to lower you into the pool. And I will be next to you, if for any reason you are too weak to swim. You will feel a cool sensation. A sort of peace will inhabit your body. The water in this pool is not really water, but the illusion of water. Once you are in it, your skin will think it is warm water. I will be next to you, if for any reason you are too weak to continue, or your body doesn't respond to its stimulating effects. Let's go. This isn't my first rodeo, Danielle said. Millennium watched at the Earthling's strange way of expressing herself. He smiled, somewhat amused. We have nothing in our conversational computers that mentions rodeo. And he slid her into the pool and jumped in beside her, as his brothers stood looking on. Why don't they join us? Danielle said. Because they are on duty and not allowed to relinquish their posts. They are here to watch over you. Not try to mate with you. You are here. Are you trying to mate with me? She said with a brazen bat of her eyes. Millennium glanced up at the two-way glass and said, No. Of course not. Why? I'm not going anywhere now, Danielle said, treading in the water as she swam up and down the pool until she was more exhausted than when she first stepped into it. When Millennium saw her slipping under, he pulled her up and placed her into a towel, and then carried an exhausted Danielle to one of the cabins on the spaceship and lay her in the bed. You will be comfortable here, and our females will bring you food and take care of you. Danielle lay unable to move, and she had more questions. Where the hell was she, and what females would take care of her? She could take care of herself if she wasn't an invalid. Well, she wouldn't be one always. Just as soon as she got some food and rest, she would be fine and demand that they bring her to her ship or drop her off on the planet Ovid. With her eyes flitting, opening and closing, she asked, You never did say why you aren't going to mate with me? After all, he was the one who gave her such an expensive present, and she liked the way he talked to her. He was patient, and the sound of his voice was soothing as well. I cannot discuss that with you. Now rest, and when you wake you will be refreshed as if you were a teenager, he said, sitting near her on the bed and gazing at her, waiting for her to sleep. She slid her tired finger and long nails up and down his bare chest. Danielle saw his skin prickle, and his nipples extend and harden. She knew there was something human inside him, and she felt relieved and relaxed. She dropped off to sleep wrapped in a blanket but woke naked and lying on a large bed of white silk sheets. Raising her hands above her head, Danielle yawned. She could move her limbs, which was refreshing and a godsend. She couldn't believe after lying in that contraption for 5 years she was still tired. There had to be something wrong with her. As she pulled herself to set upright facing the door opened to the room, and standing in the doorway, the most beautiful man she had ever seen presented a mysterious presence in the room. She wasn't afraid of him, but it was a feeling of awe. Danielle never was lost for words around males, human or alien. Only the ones she found exciting and desirable, and he was all that in one package. He stood 6'2" with a strong jaw, blue eyes, and a flurry of thick dark hair. His blue eyes made the dark features come alive like nothing she had ever seen. His mouth wide and full, and his body golden as if he had been sunbathing. She thought she had died, and now her dream had come true. But what fun would that be if she was truly dead? There was no way she could enjoy the pleasure of this fine specimen of a man standing before her. Or was he a man? Danielle didn't know, and at this point she didn't care much either. She had been on a long journey, and she can't remember the last time she had sex, if she ever had. Looking at him and the other 3 aliens made her long for that feeling of sexual release. She wished someone aboard this alien space vessel would put her out of her misery. Realizing she wasn't dead and much alive, she gasped at her naked form, and then she pulled the covers up to her neck. With the desire of wanting to have sex and needing to have sex didn't stop her from remembering that she wanted to be pursued first before she would be willing to give of herself, because with all that had happened to her, she still was looking for that one true love even in outer space. "Why are you hiding your body from me?" he asked quietly, his voice soft but strong, echoing throughout the room. "Because I'm naked and you're a stranger. I'm not in the habit of showing myself to anyone and everyone. I'm not an exhibitionist." Danielle bit her lip and lowered her eyes, still clutching the sheet to her neck. "I am aware of that term. I came across it in my travels to your planet," he said with a closed smile, as if he was enjoying a forgotten pleasant memory. His eyes swung back to Danielle. "If I weren't a stranger and you weren't naked, then you wouldn't hide yourself from me?" "If I wasn't naked, there would be no reason to hide from you," Danielle said. "I am Lannis. Now I am no longer a stranger," he said, hiding an irresistible, devastating smile. "But I am still naked," Danielle said to Lannis. Lannis looked down at her and smiled and hit a button, and the door opened and he walked out. "Oh crap. There I go messing up again," she murmured. Looking at that beautiful man was well worth the price of admission, or the price of allowing him to see me naked, she thought. She wondered if he would come again, because after all he is king of this planet, and why would he waste his time on her? As Lannis exited, in came behind him 2 women in white cotton gowns hanging to their feet. They walked with their heads down and never looked in Danielle's eyes. They appeared to have white hair, but she couldn't tell because they had their heads covered with silk scarves, and their mouths were covered as well. The only thing she could see were their blue eyes. Everyone had blue eyes. Chapter 10. The older females pulled away the sheet, and as she lay there and they began dressing her, she watched curious as they efficiently directed her to raise her arms, then placing the gown over her head and pulling her arms through the sleeveless dress. But still she had no underwear or bra. "Can I get some underwear and a bra?" "We have no language for underwear or bra." "You will not need them," one woman said, not meeting Danielle's eyes. The gown was made of the softest of silk. She felt as if she had nothing on, and by her standards she didn't. It was cut low in front down to her waist. "I'm glad that I opted for the breast augmentation," she thought. It was better than a nose job, not that she needed one. She was a beautiful young woman and probably didn't need to enlarge her breasts either, but they were testing a new product for space travel, and she said why the hell not. These might come in handy, she thought, looking down at her ample breast with pride. But the downside would be if they were cannibals, and she's being prepared to be eaten. It would be a shame if they were cannibals, the men are so good looking. There I go with my overstimulated imagination. These are the osmium. They don't eat their allies. Or do they? She murmured, looking around the room. Danielle became sure they weren't preparing her for a feast of that kind. The men were too accommodating. It didn't follow that they would be that nice to their food. She stood and turned around, inspecting the gown. It was sheer silk, barely covering her ample figure, and a slit opened down to her mound. The gown held together by mere strands of woven threads. When she observed further, she had been shaved all over. Everywhere but her head. Maybe they were cannibals after all. The notion came back to her mind. "When did you do this?" she asked. Her voice shaky, as her hands held both sides of the fabric, opening it so they could see what she meant. "When you were sleeping," the other woman said. Both women nodded their heads to her, hit a button, the door opened, and they walked out of the room, leaving Danielle glaring into space. She wondered what else went on when she was sleeping. The women came quietly and left quiet as before. Danielle never noticed because she was too caught up in her thoughts and looking down at what she was wearing. Danielle paced up and down, muttering, "This isn't what I call dressed." "I'm still naked," she said, turning around in the white silk fabric, as the door slid open, and standing before her wearing a white cloak with threads of gold, and on his head a crown of diamonds, emeralds, and gold, stood Lannis with an irresistible smile reaching the corners of his mouth and widening as his eyes roamed her body and then resting on her face. Looking at him with his brilliant blue eyes glowing, she couldn't disguise the feelings that rushed through her body. A sensuous flash of light passed between them. She could feel the sexual attraction that he felt for her. He glowed with sex appeal, starting with his eyes and down to his lips and mouth, which raised as an invitation to kiss them. Was that an illusion, like the water in the pool? Was he an illusion too? Designing himself to be a man Danielle had dreamed of meeting and falling in love with when she was on Earth. "They are waiting for us," Lannis said with a tender tone as he held out his hand. "Who is waiting? And why us? I mean, what do I have to do with this, and can't you just go alone?" Lannis didn't answer. He stood gazing at Danielle long as if he had forgotten the question, and then she saw his eyes lift away from her breasts and mound and focus on her eyes. "The court. My court is waiting. The king's court. We will be crowning a queen today," Lannis said, his voice soothing. "Great, but I can't go out like this. I need a bra and panties. And maybe something that isn't so revealing." It never occurred to her that he was talking about her. She twirled around, showing him her nakedness, which he couldn't have missed even if he were blind. He tilted his head in a questioning manner. "You know," she pointed downward, "something to cover up my special parts. The parts only my mate is supposed to see. Our females, the young ones like you, do not cover their bodies. I thought because you are one of the green people, I mean earthlings, that you would want something to hide your shame until you get used to our ways. And still you say it isn't enough covering. Here we have no shame on our planet. Then why do the males wear clothing? To cover up our large, how do you say?" She saw his face change colors. Along his forehead and jaw turned red. "Manhood," Danielle said, finishing the statement for him. "Yes, exactly," Lannis said with a closed smile, extending his hand once again. "I'm not going. I can't go in front of everyone naked and shaved." "But you must go," he said, still with his hand stretched out to her. "Just give me one reason why I have to adhere to your rules. I'm a visitor on your planet. You have signed a pact with the Alliance, and my ship will be along to pick me up soon. Just contact them. Captain Dorian will never leave one of his crew behind if he can help it." Captain Dorian left the Southern Galaxy on a mission, and the Federation gave me permission to gather the pods of your crew members. I sent the remaining crew to Ovid to be with the rest of the Star Splitters. That way, when or if Captain Dorian and his ship returns to Ovid, they will be on one planet, and it will make it easy for him. I kept you for myself, Lannis said, smiling at Danielle with his tempting curved mouth and his smile reaching his tilted blue eyes. What do you mean you kept me? You can't go around keeping a person like we're cattle. You do know what a cow is? I think I have been schooled on ancient animals who are almost extinct, Lannis said, raising one brow. Danielle crossed her arms, pivoted and strutted to the bed, and sat looking at him. Damn, he's cute, she thought. I will not go out to a coronation without any clothes. What will the queen say? You are being crowned queen. Her eyes wandered around the room, and then she glanced up at Lannis, hardly believing her ears. Maybe there was a break in the communication system. Did he say I am to be crowned queen? Who am I marrying? Some old alien creature that you have sold me to. Not exactly. Again he smiled broadly, where Danielle fell in love with his beautiful face. He can't be that handsome and a king and want to marry her, she thought. Something must be wrong with him. You will be marrying me, he said with a wide smile. She gazed at him for a long time, and her mouth fell partly open. She closed her eyes and opened them, and began staring at the incredible handsome man before her. He was her dream man. Tall and handsome, almost too beautiful to be believed. But she had heard the nightmares on spaceships of how some of the human females had married the most handsome of men, and lived to regret it. Many of the aliens were not what they said or appeared to be. Some purported to be kings, and the females soon discovered that they were just farmers on faraway planets, and once they got the females on their home planets scattered around the universe, the females became slaves to these aliens because there was no way a starship would come to rescue them. Then there was the Earthwoman that married only to discover that on their wedding night, he fed her to his family as a tradition. The stories were numerous and many. Once the humans did marry an alien and signed a contract, she was bound, and it would take too long and would be too costly, and too many wars to retrieve her. Danielle knew that as long as she didn't commit herself to Lannis, that she had hope. His planet wasn't far away from Ovid, and the Star Splitter vacationed there regularly. Once Captain Dorian discovered that his crew were missing one person, he would indeed come for her. Captain Dorian would never leave one of his crew behind. This rush to marry her proved unsettling, and Danielle became suspicious. No. I refuse to marry you, Danielle said.